Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Today, I want to talk about what you say to recruiters when you're first transitioning into contracting. So, if this is the first time you're thinking about moving into the space, you have to speak to recruiters. It's not something you can necessarily avoid. Some people do, but not everyone does. And so, whether you are inside of or outside of IR35, you may be speaking to a recruiter. So, if this is your first time, here are some things to consider. Now, a question that a recruiter may ask you is, why are you leaving? And that's a question you need to answer yourself. So before you speak to any recruiter, be clear about your reasons for leaving. Are you leaving because you feel there's an opportunity for you to really explore certain skills that you have? Are you leaving because you've worked with other contractors in your permanent 9 to 5 and you've realized actually you could do the same thing, if not provide even more value because you've had X number of years experience? Are you leaving because you think that you're going to get paid more? And that's a possibility. Or are you leaving because you want a certain sense of autonomy, or you want to widen your networking connections, or you want to have this sense of doing different things at different times and all that kind of stuff there? Whatever your reason is, be honest about it. But obviously you need to articulate that in the right way. And so let's say if it is about money, well, do you say that to a recruiter? No, not necessarily, no. But what you may say is you feel like you have an opportunity to deepen your experience and provide even more value to multiple different clients based on the experience that you've had over the last 10 years as a project manager within the environment space, as an example. Okay, so one thing I wouldn't say is talk about money, okay, as your reason for leaving, but talking about the fact that, there is an opportunity for you to go deeper. And this is where you start talking about certain skills. But we're not even speaking to the recruiter yet. We're trying to understand what we're doing first. Second thing is, are you actually ready to leave? What does ready look like for you? Maybe ready looks like for you, you're sick and tired of the fact that you're quiet quitting now, or you've explored all areas and angles of a certain sort of space, or maybe it's something else. Maybe you feel like there's more, or maybe you were inspired by another consultant or contractor or somebody within your circle who's doing what needs to be done. Maybe it's got nothing to do with that. Maybe you've got 3 to 6 months worth of savings and you're like, actually, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I want to explore this. I know it's hot in my industry. So yes, let me make the transition. So those are some things to think about when thinking about, are you ready? Now, one thing I want to say as a caveat, okay? And this is really, if there's anything you take away, this is probably one of the most important things. If you are transitioning into contracting or consulting, it's best to transition into a space that you are familiar with. What do I mean by this? If you are familiar with fintech as an example, you know that being within a finance space or the tech space or fintech makes sense for you. Why are you going to make it difficult for yourself? Oh, because I want, I think I can, yet. No, stop all of that. You're just making it all confusing for yourself. Stick to something that makes sense. You want to be as complementary as a hand fits a glove. That's how it needs to be, so that you can then start thinking about widening out. Okay, so you have a niche already. It's called what you've been doing before. And if that feels uncomfortable, then the alternative is you're going to be finding stuff that may be difficult to land. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm not necessarily pushing that narrative completely, because everyone's story is different. I'm trying to give you the least path of resistance, the least resistance to the path. I don't even know what it is. You get what I'm saying. I'm trying to make it as easier for you as possible, because when you do have conversations with recruiters, they've got a BS filter. They can check confidence. They know if you're lying or not. So if you're trying to wing this, not going to work. They'll know. Okay. So the next thing you need to think about is, what experience do you have? And of course, recruiters could ask you these questions. So this is why I'm preparing you beforehand. What experience do you have? I've spoken about PAR before. If you don't know what PAR is, you come to my channel for the first time. Pick 3 to 5 different pieces of experience and be clear about the outcomes that you have produced. The way you define this is being clear about the problem you've solved, what actions you took, and what results you've had. Now, it's not because you're going to say it in this order when you're speaking to a recruiter, but you can speak to the fact that you got a specific benefit. And then if you need to go back to speaking about what problem it was that you solved and what actions you took, then it becomes clearer. Because recruiters like to do this. So they may be like, okay, so could you tell me a little bit about your experience? They may not even say it's an interview. It's just a casual conversation, but you're just like, oh God, they're asking me these questions. So this is where you start saying, maybe you say, you've had 15 years worth of experience working in the public sector, specifically for the Department of Health and Social Care, where a lot of your focus has been centered around commissioning and project management. And that project management has focused typically around, let's say, for example, EPR or digital transformation or whatever it may be. And you can say you were actually involved in the digital child health implementation where you saved 50% on, let's say, costs due to the fact that you went from letters to text messages, as an example. And then this is what recruiters do this a lot. They want to test who you know. So, oh, do you know Johnny Tibson? Oh, yeah, I know Johnny Tibson. And so it's like, okay, you're part of that. They want to know. Never lie, of course. If you've done, the rounds or whatever it may be, say who you know. Maybe you say back to them, oh, do you know Franklin Smith? Yeah, he's the executive chief of this hospital or whatever it may be, or that organization. So this is not about showing off. You have to read the language. You have to read the room. But showing that you know the environment is a tick, I'm telling you. And funnily enough, when you're at a certain level, if you're sort of like senior management, mid-senior management, executive level, they'll want to know if some inside scoop in terms of what's happening in terms of activity. It's up to you whether you want to tell them. I'm just myself. I'm just going to say that. But that gives them a sense that you know what you're talking about. And so whether that favor is returned straight away or later on, they'll remember that you are a source of information, so to speak. So this is where you provide value. So when speaking about your experience, also be very clear, and this is in the action part of PAR, of what sort of keywords they're looking for. Recruiters, okay, you have to remember, most of them haven't done the job that you're doing, so to speak. But they would have had people come through to them who do these roles, and so they'll pick up certain language. What usually happens is the recruiter, okay, or someone within a recruitment team will speak to a hiring manager, okay, and there would be another individual who would be there trying to pick up what key things they're looking for. So key skills, maybe it's governance, maybe it's risk management, maybe it's centered around planning or implementation, whatever it may be. And so they're diligently noting this stuff. So good recruiters, okay, will have a list, they'll have a crib list of different things that, again, they're looking to hear for. And so they'll be looking for this stuff within your CV as well, which I'll get onto. And so you need to speak that language, okay? I've been involved in ensuring that there is robust risk management when it comes to program boards within the Department of Health and Social Care's, LAMP testing team, as an example. This is ensuring that whatever it may be. So you have to be able to speak the language, and speaking that language comes from knowing your role, the role that you're getting into really, really well. So this is why I said at the beginning, don't try to do some random thing that you've never done before. It has to be remotely close. The other thing is they may ask you about day rate, okay? Now this is an interesting one. This is why you need to do your homework. You have to speak to other contractors. You have to speak to maybe not necessarily anyone outside of that, but see what the market is saying. So if it's pricing you between 400 and 600 pounds a day, then this is what I did, at least anyway. I always went for the highest mark. Why did I do that? Well, one, not because I was being cheeky, because I knew that I was a good project and program management professional. I just knew that. I believed in myself. And I had the evidence to back it up. But two, the 600 element is just basically the budget that they're highlighting, that they're saying that they can sort of like afford. And 9 times out of 10, they could probably pay more, but they need a margin too. That's how it works. So you have to show you're a quality professional when it comes to the specific role that you're looking for. And that's not just defined by what you say in terms of rate, but that's also how you present yourself. And so if they ask you the open question, what rate you're looking for, you ask them, okay, what is the budget for this specific role? This is if you're getting into a role, for as an example. And then they'll tell you something, but you'll have something to reference. What did the other contractors say? What does it say on LinkedIn, as an example? What does it say on JobServe or CV Library for these specific roles? So this is why you don't just apply for everything. You have something in mind. It's really important. And so they will tell you something. Let's say the Rangers, they got a budget between 450 and 600. Okay. Oh, I was hoping to get 650. But 600 works. This is your first one, so you're trying to get into it. Sometimes they may play you down. This is where you need to decide. Are you willing to negotiate or not? Now, the reality is, it's up to you. I'm not going to say you should or shouldn't. Because 9 times out of 10, you should have done a maths either with an accountant or just by yourself to realize whether this is more than what you were receiving before or not, because that will be important. Not because it's more money, but because you're not necessarily getting the same benefits as you would if you were a permanent member of staff. And so let's say you just go with the 600, that's fine. Will that be the benchmark moving forward? It could be, if that's a good rate, or you could increase that depending on what organization or project you're working on. It all depends. So it's case by case basis, but always start by saying, what is the budget? It's that simple. And then after a while, once you get comfortable with a budget and stuff, then you can start saying, no, I asked for 650. That's what I'm looking for. And you have to be prepared for them to say, sorry, we're not willing to do that. The client's not willing to do that. Just say, okay, no problem. Thank you for your time. You either leave it there, or sometimes they say, oh, we may be able to negotiate a little bit with the hiring manager, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, no, that's fine. That's cool. So negotiating is an interesting play for sure. And I'm not going to act like I'm the best at it. But in the same vein, I definitely have been consistent, if not got what I wanted. So just bear this in mind. Okay. So when thinking about the next question, when will you be ready? So maybe this is your first time, you're not quite ready, but you want to inquire and learn more about sort of like, what does it entail? They may ask you, when will you be ready to actually jump into contracting? And so this is where you have to have done your homework beforehand. Are you actually ready to jump in? You don't have to be. Maybe you just want to have this initial conversation with them to find out more stuff. And that would be a sensible thing to do. But the reality is, you have to jump at some point. What are your circumstances looking like? Do you have some sort of redundancy pay, okay, which protects you? Are you in a situation where you have to quit? A lot of contractors that I have met were made redundant, okay, in their previous roles, their permanent jobs, and then they did contracting. I don't know many other individuals. Okay, I've met some of them now, but at the time, I hadn't met many other individuals who deliberately quit to do contracting. So I must have been a madman, okay? But it may be common now, I don't know. But the point I'm making is that whatever you decide to do, have an exit plan. Do you need savings? Are you comfortable not doing that? What does the market say? Have you spoken to enough people or looked at the market to understand what it's doing? Okay. Currently right now, roughly 75% of potentially working adults are working within the UK. So there's a whole 25% that aren't working. Does that look good? Is that bad from previous years? I can tell you right now, we are moving out from a dip that once was after the pandemic, but it's still a bit techie at the moment. But there are definitely roles. I looked at some roles today, not because I'm looking, but because I was preparing for these videos. And there are quite a lot of like roles. I think there's a bit of buoyancy in some areas of the market. Not every area of the market's got that, okay? So think about what you need to do and then define what that time frame looks like. So if you have a 3 month sort of like a notice period, then maybe it's 4 months. You're ready. You're just like, you're gonna get ready. You're gonna hand in your notice in a month's time, and you're gonna work those 3 months. But maybe you're like, actually no. I remember Michael saying that actually this stuff is seasonal. So does this work? Like, okay, if I leave in 4 months, so May, June, July, August. Ooh, September may be a bit tricky. So I'll have 3 months after that because I've got savings. So September, October, November. Okay, I may get a role. It's not the best time, but I know like mid-September onwards, it may kind of work. So yeah, I'm gonna go for it. Plus, may need a bit of downtime during the Christmas season, and actually, I've got 5 months worth of saving. If you don't have savings, then you have to really think to yourself, what are you willing to do? And I didn't. I was a bit ballsy, but I negotiated with my line manager, and I said to her that would you be able to let me go once I found something? Because that was the best setup for me. So maybe that works in your favor. So there are different ways in which you can play it. Hopefully you're still with me, and hopefully you understand that answering these smart questions enables you to be in a position where you feel more confident about talking to a recruiter. There are some questions you can ask the recruiter too, okay? Because you want to sound like not like a pro, but you want to sound like you're ready to jump in, okay? So the first question I know I asked at least was, what does the market look like for you right now? How busy are you when it comes to getting people contracts? And you want to understand their framework. You want to understand where they get the information. 9 times out of 10, they get their information from talking to prospective contracting clients, as well as contractors. Okay, that's where they get their information from. They probably got databases and stuff with all this kind of jazz there. So get some insights and show some curiosity. You also want to ask questions like, what type of industries or organizations are coming to you wanting contractors? What does the demand look like? And where's it coming from? Because again, that gives you an idea of seeing whether you're worthy. Maybe you haven't quite presented yourself well. Maybe they haven't articulated a certain thing a certain way. So you want to understand if that's the case. Another question you could ask is, roughly how long does it take for one to secure a contract? Okay, what is that looking like right now? They may say it depends and blah, 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 this and that. But try and pin them down with something. Like roughly, what are you seeing for someone like me? Are you seeing many people like me come to you? Yeah, I want to understand the competitive nature of this. And also, how long does it take for you to actually sit in the contract once it's been agreed? So I know on average it takes about 17 days, and I got that from Public Sector Resourcing, which is I think as it stands, they're going through reprocurement, I'm not sure, but which is one of the biggest suppliers for the government. Okay. And so it's roughly on average 17 days. So these questions imbue confidence in you if you were to proceed with this recruiter. So before I continue, again, if you're looking to see if you are consultant or contractor ready, then I've got a survey below that you can take. It's roughly about 5 minutes to take. And it just basically positions you in a way to understand whether you are ready to dive into this space. Even taking the questions makes you think about it in a bit more detail. This is a beta version, okay, so it's an initial version, so maybe a bit clunky or whatever it may be, but it's definitely a great tool to understand more about whether you're in the right space, right mindset, right sort of positioning, all that kind of stuff there. So click on the link below so you can take it. So the third point I want to make is your CV needs to be ready from day one. I remember I wasn't quite ready with my CV when I first spoke to a recruiter, but they're going to ask for it. Just assume every time you speak to a recruiter, your CV needs to be ready. So whether you're using something like CV Library, you can check the link out below, and that's what I used initially to get my CV up to scratch. Essentially, all you're doing is you're giving them a preface of what you're looking for and also your CV, and then they'll improve it. Of course, we've got AI these days. But maybe you want a human to do it. Maybe they're using AI. I don't know. I don't even know. I did this at a time where there was no AI, okay, or wasn't a big thing. So whatever you decide to use, whether it's AI, using, someone else's services, getting someone else to check it, or just you, just do a good job. Make sure it is ATS friendly, okay? Because there are certain scanners that check to see if it's formatted a certain way. I don't need to go through all of it. You need to check my video where I talk about developing a CV and all that kind of stuff there. Okay. And I've actually got a CV template you can check out below if this is something that you're interested in. So make sure your CV is on point. Okay. Make sure it is prepped in a way that is contractor ready. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is it needs to highlight projects. Make it really clear. That's what I'm saying. Problem, action, result. Problem, action, result. You may want to highlight what problem you're solving or set some context or a two-liner to really talk about what it is that you did within that space. The actions are the sort of tasks that you did or the responsibilities that you had or the accountabilities that you had aligned to a known framework or methodology for the role that you're in. Then you want to have a one-liner of the benefit that you produced or the outcomes that you produced. Really important stuff. This is what people do because it reads professional. I remember when I was checking CVs one time, and I think I was reviewing like 30 odd CVs, and I remember this one CV. I said, ugh, this is terrible. Terrible. I don't know the context of this individual, but the formatting was all over the place. To me, it just showed me that your mind is not prepped to be a certain person who delivers a certain way. And unfortunately, that is a prejudice. That is a form of discriminative behavior. But the whole interview process it's discrimination against what you provide when it comes to your CV or supporting statement or whatever it may be. So you need to give yourself the best chance based on the lens and perspective of the hiring manager who may bring you in. So your CV is a strategic sales document. There's no two ways about it. The other thing I want to say is that when you are talking to a recruiter, you can't go on this apologetic, humble thing of, yeah, I know it's not bad. It's just bad switching and all of this kind of stuff. No. Give them a solid reason why you want to switch. I feel that I'm ready to become a contractor because there is a lot of value that I can provide within this space, as evidenced in the last 10 years within the NHS, within the Green Party, I don't know, I'm making up stuff, within Company G. And I know that the skills that I have in facilitation, stakeholder engagement, and robust risk management is what this industry needs. There's a gap that I've seen that I've been able to utilize in the last 10 years. I want to be able to provide this to various different clients over my time and provide even more value. What? That sounds like believable. It's because it's true. In this example, at least anyway. So talk with conviction, my friends. If you have to practice, okay? But sometimes when you practice like that, it feels deeper than it needs to be. So you just need to put yourself in a seat of looking through what you've done, articulating it in a way that makes sense, and then communicating it. That's what it comes down to, my friends. It doesn't matter if you're doing business, contracting, or consulting. It's all the same. It's about how you pitch. It's about your personal brand. Those things don't change. So you'll realize a thread in my content if you've been watching this stuff over the last almost 90 days, every single day. So hopefully that's been useful. Obviously, make sure to check out some of the stuff that I recommend below, whether it's the CV writing template, the consultant readiness assessment, which is similar to the contracting one as well, and anything else that I've mentioned. So remember, make sure you're prepped for those 4 questions that I spoke about before. Those 4 questions are, let me just scroll up. So answering, are you ready to leave your current space of employment? What experience do you have? What's your day rate? And when will you be ready? Okay. The other things that I want to highlight is make sure you ask questions. Okay. So these questions may be centered around what does the market look like? What sort of clients are you getting? So organizations that are asking for contractors, roughly how long does it take to secure a contract in this current sort of market, as an example? You may not get a straight answer, but it's good to sort of keep on asking because someone may have something that you've never heard before. You also need a bulletproof CV. That's a clean profile, clean formatting, ATS friendly, sort of like key skills section, PAR, problem, action, result. Make sure it's outcomes focused. Make it project specific and or contract specific, okay? Doesn't matter whether you've done contracting before or not, present it that way. And then everything else, you know what to do, okay? I know they talk about AI writing sort of like CVs and stuff. Be my guest. I haven't used those. I don't need to use those. I'm old school for now. Okay, maybe I'll change my tune later on. And I'm not saying don't use them, but of course there are AI detectors. Sometimes you have to even declare whether you're using AI and all this kind of stuff there. So sometimes you just need to do the hard work and go through it yourself so you can internalize what you've actually done. You may get a bit of support from AI from a brainstorming standpoint, but it can't just be the thing that you use. And of course, also think about framing things from a conviction standpoint and a clarity standpoint rather than a victimhood and sort of apologetic standpoint. So that's what I want to say to you. So those are certain things that you need to bear in mind. So hopefully this has been useful. Hopefully you've taken some lessons from this. Again, if you want to see more videos centered around portfolio careers, contracting, and anything alike, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.